All right, all right. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest today, you've seen him here before, Professor Marandi. He is a professor at the University of Tehran. Professor Marandi, welcome back. And how are you? How are you doing given everything that's happening?
Hi, Sabrina. Thank you very much for inviting me. Things are okay. They've slowed down the internet for security reasons, and so I had to find a place to be able to be with you and to be able to use the internet for programs like this. So I'm the connection here isn't great either, but besides that, all else is fine.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Thursday night, when I was live, there was an alert that Israel struck Iran. Now, from what I've been gathering and what I've been paying attention to in the news, Donald Trump was supposed to have a meeting with Iran on Sunday. So Israel decided to strike Iran before then. Um, Obviously, I think we all know why. What's interesting about that as well is after Israel decided to strike Iran, Benjamin Netanyahu got on a plane and fled to Greece. And this is one of the times when I question, for the Israeli people, like for them to feel as though it's okay for him to get on a plane and run away at a time after he was the one that threw the first punch and then he just leaves everybody else there. That's one thing that I've been wondering about. But another thing is, what was it like in Tehran during that moment? And then we'll get to the retaliatory strikes from Iran. Were you near where the strike happened? Was there a lot of panic, or were people more so anticipating this?
Well, first, I just would like to point out that uh, Greece is harboring a genocidal maniac who's carrying out a Holocaust, and history will remember the role that Greece has played in all of this. It is not the sunny island where people go for tourism. It is an island where the leadership has been deeply complicit in crimes against humanity for the last 20 months. Well, the Iranian armed forces was on alert and they were expecting an attack. I don't think they were expecting a strike on senior military officials or senior government officials because that would be a different level of conflict. And they got that wrong, but they were expecting an attack. The first day was, I think, a very tough day for ordinary Iranians because they had lost senior commanders, and these were people who were war heroes. Some of them served during the whole 8 years of war when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran as volunteers or as military personnel in the front lines during the whole 8 years. They weren't people who were, let's say, working in Tehran. They were on the battlefield. Many of them had multiple wounds. So for older people like myself, some of their names were still remembered quite well. And the attacks, it's very interesting how the Western media likes to depict this as some sort of fantastic intelligence operation. What they did was they just bombed buildings where these people lived, for the most part, and or where they were at work. But what they did, one building which is not far from my house, from where we live, our apartment, 60. I've been just told on a couple of hours ago, 65 people, if I'm not mistaken, were killed, including 20 some children. So they wiped out the entire building, everyone in the building, so that they could get one or two people. This is what the Israeli regime is, and it shouldn't surprise any of us because they've been carrying out a Holocaust for the last 20, 21 months now. They've carried out genocidal attacks in Lebanon, and Western media, Western governments, Western elites, think tankers, they don't care. I remember when I was in Beirut, and I may have told you this before. Sorry for repeating myself if I have. When I was in Beirut, I was there when the war started, and Western journalists were the Al Jazeera journalist, by the way. She was in Beirut, and she was bad mouthing Iran as the Israelis were bombing the city and bombing people's apartments. And I protested to her. I mean, she was just as the Israelis were just bombing the city. She was saying Iran is evil. Iran is, and she's one of their top experts on the region and on Iran. So that says a lot about Al Jazeera, and of course, Qatar is deeply involved in all of this. But I'll get to that later. So the journalists, the Western journalists in Beirut, their fixers were Lebanese, their drivers were Lebanese, their producers were Lebanese. Many of them lived in southern Beirut, but they were saying that these are Hezbollah strongholds, these are Hezbollah targets, and they knew they were lying, all of them, every single one of them, because their own people were living, some of them were living in these towns or in southern Beirut. And they knew that the Israeli regime was implementing the Dahiya doctrine, which is flatten Beirut. And you saw just, I think, yesterday, the Israeli defense minister said, we're going to burn Tehran. I mean, these are genocidal maniacs. Burn Gaza, burn Beirut.
I was just giving them the update about Donald Trump lying and Marco Rubio lying, that they didn't know, that they weren't involved. They didn't know that Israel was going to strike Iran. And now even Western media has released that information that they did in fact know. Of course, they gave the go-ahead. But go ahead, Professor.
Yes, sorry, I'm using my cell phone internet. The Wi-Fi here isn't working well. So,
oh, no worries. Go ahead.
So the point is that they were striking civilian targets. This was not sophisticated at all. They were just murdering people. But the Western media likes to portray the Mossad and Israel as sophisticated, and they're trying, in fact, to whitewash their Holocaust in Gaza by starting afresh and putting them in a positive light and how sophisticated and how effective they are. Any surprise attack, even though the Iranians were on high alert, but any surprise attack is going to cause a certain amount of devastation. That's how it works. But so in my neighborhood, they hit a building. In neighborhoods near my neighborhood, they hit other buildings. Today they've carried out bomb attacks. The Israeli Air Force hasn't actually been very effective in the last couple of days. So Iran's air defenses, which on the first day were not prepared for this sort of onslaught, now they're doing much better. And the Israeli regime, what they're doing is they don't have Mossad inside Iran. What they have is they have mercenaries that they find on WhatsApp or Telegram or elsewhere, and they pay them Bitcoin and that sort of thing to carry out terrorism or some sort of activity to help the Israeli regime. And quite a few of them have been arrested. But it's not as if there's a Mossad base in Iran. And I was on Sky News, and the host was saying, yes, Mossad has set up a base in Iran. And I said, how do you know this? Just because the Israelis say so, you just take everything they say at face value. So they've been trying to create this invincible image of the Israeli regime, a regime that's has shown that after 20 months, it's been unable to take Gaza, and in the war in Lebanon, it was failed to take even a single town until after the ceasefire. Then they went and took parts of Lebanon in violation of the ceasefire. But that first day was very tough. People were very upset. And in the evening, they were demands that the government respond. People were going to the streets and demanding retaliation, and they were all in all the different cities. And but swiftly they put in new commanders to replace the old ones. And the first night, as you know, and as your viewers know, the Iranians began retaliation. And last night, the retaliation continued. And today, during the day, they've also struck the Israeli regime. And I think that the Israeli regime is losing momentum. And now Iran's momentum is building. And that is why Trump, I think, made this Truth Social statement, posted this Truth Social statement talking about peace. Until now, he was saying how fantastic this attack was and how great things were going. Well, apparently things are not going as well as planned. But yes, and this, I think, what Trump has done is he has shown how he's shown his duplicity. Not only does he flip flop, not only does he constantly change his position, but in this case, he was being he was trying to deceive the Iranians from the start. There was no intention to solve the nuclear program or the nuclear issue at the negotiating table. Behind the scenes, they were preparing to kill Iranians. And the scenes that we saw in Tehran were like in Beirut and Gaza. You know, kids thrown out of the building, you know, people crushed under buildings, under rubble, the targeting of innocent civilians, ordinary factories. They struck a car factory. So, you know, the Israeli regime has no red lines. And it's obvious why. When you're an ethno-supremacist regime, when the people around you are subhuman, when you are the chosen people, then obviously you can do whatever you want. It's just like, I mean, it's the only difference is that in the West today, the elites pretend that somehow they're different from their predecessors in the 19th and 20th centuries, when they would colonize countries, they'd take slaves, they'd destroy cities and towns and tribes and villages and people. The only difference now is that they pretend that they're doing it in the name of human rights and civilization, and now it's being done on camera. What's totally new today is everything is in front of us, but still they have the audacity to pretend that all is fine. But in any case, I see the tide is turning, and the Iranians, I think, tonight are going to hit the Israeli regime very hard.
Yes, let's talk about that because I've watched the videos and I remember I think the first video that I saw and it was the hypersonic missiles coming through and I said, well, there goes the Iron Dome. And I want to send this message to the American people. Just think about all the money that was spent to establish that Iron Dome and it doesn't even stop the hypersonic missiles. Do you feel like there's been a debate online, you've probably seen this. Do you feel as though Iran is being too soft on Israel, or do you feel that the response is proportionate? And I ask that question because some people are warning that if Iran does not get to Benjamin Netanyahu, that the Israeli, military are going to take out uh, Iranian leaders to cause total chaos in Iran. And then, of course, I think we would know what would happen from there, right? The US government would come in and say, we need regime change in Iran. And we saw all that with Libya and other countries alike. And I'm curious, do you think that the response right now is still measured, or do you feel like the response from Iran is softer than the way that Israel? Because I'll tell you right now, I think Israel would just go full speed ahead right now. What do you think?
There was something that you said first that I wanted to respond to, and I can't remember what it was. I'm very tired. Sorry, I haven't slept much. I haven't really met many people during the last couple of days, and I just every now and then call people and see what's happening. So I'm sometimes I know less about what's going on than people on the streets. But people following social media, they know more than me right now. But let me put it this way. First of all, the Iranians are warming up. They're just beginning. These new commanders that have taken over, although they're generals and they've been there for a very long time, these are new positions. So they're just getting acquainted with the situation and so on. So they're getting there, but it will take some time. So that's A. B. The Israeli regime does not have the ability to create chaos in Iran. We have a constitution. We have checks and balances. During the Iran-Iraq war, when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, and the West supported Saddam, and so did the Soviet bloc as well. We were all alone back then in the 1980s. And the West gave him chemical weapons, as you know. I survived 2 of those chemical attacks, both mustard gas and nerve gas. And the Germans, in particular, ironically, were the ones who had the most to do with chemical warfare and supporting Saddam to gas Iranians and his own people. Back then, they took out our president. Back then, we had a prime minister, and they they voted for a new constitution, and they removed the prime minister and made it the first vice president. So they took out the president, the prime minister, the head of the judiciary, government ministers, many MPs, terrorist groups. And those terrorist groups, by the way, are all based in the West. The MEK, the Mujahideen Khalq, which murdered many thousands of Iranians and were foot soldiers for Saddam Hussein and murdered senior officials. They have offices throughout Europe and North America. They have bases throughout Europe. Imagine if a terror group in the United States that had killed thousands or tens of thousands of people, let's say, I think they killed 17,000 people, who killed 17,000 Americans. And of course, the population of the United States is greater. So let's say 50,000 Americans. And and they had offices in Iran. How would the American public respond? So back then, these terrorists took out many of our leaders, but nothing happened. After the war, Imam Khomeini passed away. We had a new leader in one day. We have a constitution. There's nothing that the Israeli regime can do to bring down the Islamic Republic of Iran. We may have setbacks, but we will quickly regroup. And I think it's amazing how quickly the Iranian armed forces regrouped. And within hours, they started hitting back at the regime. And within hours, the air defenses began to operate effectively. And by the way, a lot of the information coming out from the Israeli regime side is disinformation and misinformation. A lot of these clips, they are AI made. A lot of them are old clips. A lot of them are not real. Some of them, they bomb decoys, and the Israelis publish them. But when you bomb the real thing, you have secondary explosions. But there are no secondary explosions. So they think that they're blowing up missile launchers, but they're too foolish. Even those Israeli soldiers who publish them are not even educated enough in military affairs to know that what they're publishing is a decoy. So the radar that they've hit, the decoys, or a lot of them are they're not the real thing. So again, because the media is in the hands of the West, because the internet, they control social media, so obviously they have the upper hand. But the tide is turning very rapidly. So Iran is warming up, but I don't believe that the Israeli regime has that capability at all. I think it's going to be the other way around, Sabrina. Netanyahu, I think, is going to pay the ultimate price. This is going to be his downfall. He will lose. Iran is determined to defeat Netanyahu because the Israeli regime in the United States and the West, which supports it, it's amazing that the French, the British, the Germans, all of them are supporting this unprovoked attack. They're supporting the attack on nuclear sites, which could lead to contamination and radioactive contamination that could kill people but they don't care. They support this ethno-supremacist regime. So um, the the way I see it is that the Iranians are gradually getting there. The armed forces they've regrouped and they're getting stronger. And the Israeli regime is now on the back foot. They are sending messages to Iran, the United States, through different means. The French president called. Why would he do that? The Emir of Qatar called. Why would he do that? It's clear. The United States is sending messages to Iran that we had nothing to do with this, and the Iranians have said, say it publicly if that's the case. And by the way, the Iranians are prepared for an American direct involvement, and that would Sabrina be catastrophic for the United States and the world.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you, most people that I've heard from said they do not want to go die for Israel. They do not think that Americans should be involved in this. One of them being Colonel Douglas McGregor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Oh
him.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, he's made a number of statements on social media and on podcasts alike, making it very clear that Americans should not get involved with this at all. I think he's a conservative, but he's 100% against American involvement. And he brought up something really interesting. I want to read you something that Colonel Douglas McGregor said, because this brings up the issue of oil. Um, Colonel Douglas McGregor said, one Israeli strike on Karg Island, where 90% of Iran's oil exports flow, or Bandar Abbas terminals, and Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, that's 20% of global oil supply. This is the question a friend of the show, Roger Meadows, brought up about the oil. I don't think that people who are cheering this on just understand how catastrophic that could be for all of us, for the entire world. If you're complaining about gas prices now, just imagine how high gas prices would be if that were to happen. Also, if this were to happen, then this whole belief of uh, they need to get Iran needs to go. We want the resources. This is really what this is really about. The United States government doesn't care about the Saudis. They don't care about people in the UAE. They don't care about those in Jordan. Honestly, to be honest with you, I don't think they really care about the Israelis either. They care about the resources in that region. And I've said this for years. We needed to stop having so much dependence on oil, and we needed to move towards other means of energy and resources in this country, in the world. But that's really what it's about. But the oil, Professor Marandi, if that attack were to happen, we're all screwed.
It's worse than that, Sabrina, because not only is it the oil that goes from the Persian Gulf, but a lot of the Saudi oil goes through the Red Sea. They have a pipeline instead of using the Persian Gulf, but that will be gone. And the same is true with the Emirates. And then Iraqi oil, that will end. And so will Azerbaijan oil. Iran will make sure that the United States pays the ultimate price. And it will not just be about people dying for this ethno-supremacist regime. It will be an end to the global economy as we know it. So people will be riding horses if they don't have to kill them for food. It will be a very different world. It won't be 1929 and the 1930s. It'll be something, I think, significantly worse. So that is the worst case scenario. But Iran is prepared for it. If anyone looks at the map of the Persian Gulf, Iran owns one side of the Persian Gulf. That's why it's called the Persian Gulf. And all those tiny Arab dictatorships, family dictatorships on the other side, they're glass palaces and they're hosting American bases. If the Americans get involved, the Iranians will consider all these regimes to be complicit. It's like Canada hosting bases from some third party, and then that third party attacking the United States. Canada will be seen as working with the enemy, or Mexico, whoever. So these regimes have to be very careful about what the United States intentions of Trump, because Trump is not a normal person. He flip flops, he changes. He's I think easily influenced, and of course he has the neocons and the Zionists surrounding him, and they don't care for Americans. They don't care for anything but themselves. So, someone once said, I think it was uh, your uh, what's her name? She just gave out a clip saying that warning against nuclear war. Sorry, I'm so tired.
No worries.
Um, yeah, she gave out that clip of warning about nuclear conflict and saying that maybe these people who are promoting it, Tulsi Gabbard, maybe these people, they think that, well, if the world is destroyed and the global economy is destroyed, at least they will be taken care of, and who cares about everyone else? But if the U.S. economy collapses and you have gasoline at, I don't know, $25 a gallon, I think a lot of Americans will be searching for these people, trying to find them, because they've destroyed their lives.
I agree with that 100%. This is the warning we've tried to give people now, not too long after October 7th. I know you and many others were warning people that Israel needs to be held accountable. Otherwise, this could lead to a possible war with Iran, not because Iran wanted that, but because Benjamin Netanyahu made it very clear, the Greater Israel Project, right? And he said that Iran was the curse. They didn't want Iran there. So it's very clear like what they want to do. They want to expand. This isn't just Gaza or the West Bank, right? So people did not take, I think, that warning to task. I feel like people just thought, well, this will eventually end when Donald Trump is elected. And I didn't believe, I think people don't understand. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump won or Kamala Harris won. I think we would still be at this point that we're at today. I really do, because both parties support Israel. So I don't, if Kamala would have won, I also still think that Israel would have attacked Iran. Actually, it could have been even harsher because Benjamin Netanyahu has less respect for Kamala Harris than he did for Donald Trump. So these are things to think about. But people are starting to ask the question, who is going to come to help Iran? And that brings up Yemen. People are asking about Russia and China. If this continues to escalate, do you foresee Yemen possibly, striking Israel again or more? Or do you see Russia and China getting involved in any way?
Well, Sabrina, in the 1980s, when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran and he had the support of the West and the Eastern Bloc, both blocs, Iran was all alone. No one was supporting Iran, and we we had difficulty, as I maybe have said before. We had problems importing gas masks because the West tried to block us from purchasing them. So I remember my own gas mask was North Korean. So the North Koreans were really the bad guys. They provided us with gas masks, and the West tried to prevent us from, and the Soviet Union at the time tried to prevent us from having gas masks, and they were providing Saddam Hussein with the chemical weapons to use against us. So that's how sinister these people were. We were a country under siege. We were all alone, and the revolution had just happened. The institutions were just emerging. The state wasn't. It was a new government, a new political establishment. The armed forces were not prepared, but we overcame, and we defeated Saddam Hussein's aggression on our own. He failed to take anything from Iran, and ultimately he went bankrupt, and that's why he invaded Kuwait. And we know the rest of the story. So Iran is fiercely independent, and it is more than prepared to defend itself. And if the Americans strike, the Iranian underground assets, missile and drone bases that could target American targets across the region are far greater than what Iran has prepared for the Israeli regime, because the Persian Gulf is right next door. You don't need these long-range drones and long-range missiles. Very short-range drones and missiles can take out everything on the other side of the Persian Gulf very quickly and easily. And all these bases are underground, because ever since the United States invaded Afghanistan and then Iraq and surrounded Iran effectively in 2003, the Iranians were preparing themselves for a potential American invasion. And so they started building all their key assets underground. That's why the Israelis have not been able to destroy any of Iran's missile or drone bases, because they're deep underground. That's why they cannot destroy the nuclear program. They can destroy a few buildings on the land. They're not important. The nuclear program, it's all underground, and factories, all key. Increasingly over the years, the Iranians put key assets deep underground.
So they've been preparing.
Because that's the only way they could protect them in case of war with the United States. So is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the only way that the Iranians could defeat they could protect themselves against a more powerful adversary. But since then, the Iranians have been building sophisticated drones and sophisticated missiles, and now we're seeing them in action, and how the Iranians are outmatching the Israelis. The Israelis, increasingly, we're seeing their air force being less effective, and the missiles that they fire at Iran have small warheads. You see what the Iranian missile warheads do in Israel. And by the way, this is what you said that I wanted to correct. We haven't used a single hypersonic missile yet. Those missiles that you've seen that hammer the Israeli regime hard, those are not hypersonic missiles. And most of the missiles that the Iranians are using right now are older generation. They're using some newer missiles, but mostly older missiles, because they've had them for 25, 30 years. They want to get rid of them. So the hypersonic missiles have yet to be used. And Iran has said that they have a lot that they have not revealed up to now. So I think that in the days ahead, things are going to get bad. And my advice to these Zionists is to leave, go back home, go to the United States, go back to New Jersey or the Bronx or wherever it is in the United States that you're from, or back to Eastern Europe or to Russia or to Germany. Go back home and live safe lives. And those Jewish Palestinians, they can stay put. They're indigenous. It's their territory too. But for the bulk of them, they can go back to the Arab countries or the African countries that they came from. But that's the way to escape this. But Iran is not going to relent. Iran will not allow the Israeli regime or the Americans to gain anything through this aggression. Iran is determined to make them regret this. And that is why I think we're nearing the end. I'm guessing we're nearing the end of Netanyahu's reign of terror. Of course, the removal of Netanyahu doesn't change anything about the Israeli regime. It's like Nazi Germany without Hitler. No,
Right.
not acceptable. It's like ISIS without Abu Bakr Baghdadi, or it's like Al Qaeda with Jolani changing his name to Sharat. Doesn't work. This is a monstrous regime, and the only acceptable solution ultimately will be the end of ethno-supremacism, the end of human hierarchy in Palestine. And until that happens, there really won't be peace. A two-state solution is dead. We all know that. They've colonized the West Bank way too far, and with too many mad, crazy fanatics for that to happen. But in any case, the Iranians are determined to see this through. And the Israelis have made catastrophic mistake by carrying out this surprise attack. Yes, they killed some people, they destroyed some equipment, but they're the aggressor. And despite the Western media trying to glorify them and try to show how sophisticated they are and try to demonize Iran, the world knows that they're the aggressor. And that gives Iran the upper hand. And ordinary Iranians see them as an aggressor, So that is united Iranians. This is not going to end well for the regime. And as we move forward, it's going to get tougher for them. The Americans have a choice. Either they stay out of this, well, they're still very much a part of it. But if the Americans get directly involved, we know what's going to happen. Americans should buy horses and donkeys. And the world is going to change.
Yeah.
But the smart thing to do would be for the Americans to get out of it and to start putting pressure on the Israeli regime to end this. But the only way it's going to end is with certain conditions being met. Certain conditions will have to be met.
Yeah, so I hope everybody heard that, because that's a number of things. Some of the images and some of the reporting on X, people are pointing out like it's not 100% correct, but I hope everybody heard that. Apparently those aren't the hypersonic missiles. And I've already seen, you guys have seen, if you're on social media, the damage that the missiles that have been used has done. So just imagine if they were to use the hypersonic missiles. I mean, Israel, again, we have to bring this up. You know, Israel decided to attack Iran. Like, Iran was basically just chilling. And crazy Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet decided, no, let's go ahead. This is our chance to pull the US into a war with Iran. And there's no turning back now. Like, this was their choice. This was their decision. And I want to get your opinion about the aggressor, because I am noticing, of course, on Western media and also on social media, the same people, the same commentators that said this all started on October 7th when Hamas killed the Israeli people, and they're still spreading the beheaded baby lie. Those same commentators are now saying, well, Israel struck Iran, but they had no choice. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay. It's okay because it's Israel. And this is just a big part of like the Western propaganda. But I have to tell you, Professor Marandi, I'm surprised at the number of Americans that are not falling for it, because I said, uh-oh, now that it changed from Gaza to Iran, I said, I don't think everybody's going to come over to, the side of Iran, because there's a lot of propaganda in this country about Iran. But I'm shocked at the number of people that said, no, no, no. Israel started this. Donald Trump was supposed to meet with them on Sunday. And it's just, I'm curious to get your perspective about that. Like, these people have no shame.
No, they don't have any shame. And Western media, legacy media, has no shame. Netanyahu has been lying about the Iranian nuclear program for almost 4 decades. And Larry Johnson, a mutual friend of ours, I said 3 decades, and he corrected me and said it's longer than that. And for all these decades, he's been saying Iran is weeks away, months away, a couple of years away from a nuclear weapon. Western media knows this. Western journalists know this. This is all over the internet. But they won't say it. They will just say, yes, Iran is on the verge of making a bomb or something like that. The buildings, by the way, that the Israeli regime has bombed, which, as I said, are not really that important. The important installations are all deep underground. But all of those buildings, they are buildings that inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency regularly visit. There's never been any evidence from any of the technical experts from this organization that Iran is building a nuclear weapon. And we should make a clear distinction between the board of governors and the analysts and the experts. The board of governors is a political entity. They're representative of governments. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, like all international bodies, is dominated by the West because they were all created after the Second World War. So their statements on Iran are based upon the demands of Washington, the needs of Washington. If you go to WikiLeaks, the previous head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, when he wanted to get elected, he was Japanese, passed away a few years ago. He told Americans, vote for me, back me, and I'll support you on all key issues. It's in WikiLeaks. Your viewers can look them up right now and put them up on in the chat for people to see. And of course, the current head is the documents that Iran has been able to take, Iranian intelligence, the huge amount of documents that they've been able to take from Israel, the Israeli regime. They clearly show that the current head of this body is fully is cooperating fully with this regime, a regime that has nuclear weapons, by the way. So Iran, there's no indication that Iran is developing nuclear weapons. In fact, the issues that have been brought forward again, that have been rehashed, are all old issues that were being resolved 3 years ago. When the United States was thinking about having a nuclear deal, the issues become resolved. Whenever they want to escalate again, those resolved issues become a problem again. That's how the United States works. They use things as leverage. The U.S. government has no sense of morality, no standards, acceptable standards. Today I weaponize something against you. Tomorrow I decide not to. The day after tomorrow I weaponize it again against you. That's how the Board of Governors at the International Atomic Energy Agency works. But there's absolutely no evidence that Iran has moved towards developing a nuclear weapon. And in fact, Trump is if anything, Trump is the person who's pushed Iran closer to a nuclear weapon than anyone else, because he tore up the nuclear agreement, created maximum pressure, and that ultimately pushed Iran towards developing its nuclear program, enriching uranium at 60% for leverage. And now they threaten Iran with strikes, and Iran says, if we feel threatened, then we will change our nuclear doctrine. So ultimately, the person who has contributed more than anyone else to push Iran towards nuclear weapons is Trump. But so far, Iran has not done that, and Iran does not want nuclear weapons for two reasons. One is that during the Iran-Iraq War, Iran sees it as immoral. And during the Iran-Iraq War, when Saddam Hussein was using these Western chemical weapons, leaders went to Ayatollah Khomeini, Imam Khomeini, and said, we need to make chemical weapons to respond. And he said, no, they're immoral. And he didn't allow them to develop. This is very well documented. And the current leader, from the very beginning, he said no to nuclear weapons. Iran is the United States. The United States itself admits that Iran is not developing nuclear weapons. It says after 2003, it hasn't been doing so.
So then, what does
Iran, even before 2003, hasn't been doing so. But at least the United States government itself. Yeah, you're saying.
Oh, so then what does Iran want? Because I'll tell you, I've been hearing since I was a kid that Iran was developing nuclear weapons. I'm just telling you guys, for those who are younger and may not be aware of that. I've heard this for years. I haven't seen any proof. But what exactly does Iran? Because here's the thing. If I feel like this, if other countries around me are going to have nuclear weapons, they need to disarm. Right? Like, I don't feel like any country should have nuclear weapons, but I would also feel very vulnerable if the countries around me have them, but I'm told I'm not allowed to have one and leave myself open for, Israel to just try to come in and slaughter the people and take over like they did in Syria, right? So what exactly does Iran want?
Well, first and foremost, Iran wants to remain a sovereign nation. That was what the revolution was all about. It was about dignity, sovereignty, having decisions made in Tehran, and having an independent foreign policy. Under the Shah, Iran sent its fighter jets to Vietnam for the United States to use to bomb Vietnam, North Vietnam. Under the Shah, Iran supplied South Africa, apartheid South Africa, with 90% of its oil. Under the Shah, Iran had relations with Israel and purchased weapons made by the Israelis. And when the revolution happened, immediately Iran cut off ties with apartheid South Africa and the Israeli regime and began funding uh, Southern African liberation movements, including the ANC military wing and the political wing. And the Iranians began to support the Palestinian cause. So Iran wants an end to ethno-supremacism in West Asia. And Iran obviously wants an end to this Holocaust. And Iran will not allow, Sabrina, Iran and the axis of resistance will not allow the Israeli regime and the Americans and the Europeans to get away with the extermination of the Palestinian people. That will not happen.
I understand that. It was really interesting to me that Benjamin Netanyahu had the nerve to mention the Bible after he struck Iran. It's really interesting to me because I have very, very, very serious issues with the way that people are purposefully Zionism and in particular Christian Zionism is purposefully misinterpreting passages in the Bible to make the excuse for a Zionist supremacist state like Israel. And it was just appalling to me that he stood there and gave the speech and said, oh, they're coming after us. They're coming after civilians, as if they haven't been doing that for decades, not just after October 7th, but for decades, what they did to the Palestinian people. It was very disgusting to see him stand there and say that. And he said that from a bunker. He said that after leaving people in Israel and fleeing to Greece to try to run and hide. I feel like if the people in Israel are going to have to push back against Benjamin Netanyahu, or nothing is going to change for them. And we've seen this happen with other countries, right? I saw Sri Lanka a couple of years ago. They pushed their prime minister out and said, "You're not treating the people well. You got to get out of here." And he got on a plane and left, right? So as long as they continue to go along with this project, because this is the part, Professor Marandi, when I hear people say, we have to have security in Israel, we have to be safe, we need a place that we can be safe, right? I feel like you wouldn't have the need for this security and this safety if you did not attack and destroy and pillage other groups, indigenous groups in that region. You wouldn't have to worry about security and safety. So the Likud party took things a step further, but this issue with Zionism is ultimately what brought them here.
You know, when there was a conference in Iran a while back, and a number of people that you and I both know came to Iran and visited the country, and I encouraged them to go to synagogues. And I think first it was George Galloway who went to synagogue and did a report from there, and then Max went, I think, and I think he's doing a documentary or something on the synagogues now, or he did his he did some work and it will turn into a documentary. That's what I think he was planning. You have synagogues in Tehran, in Isfahan, and probably in other places. These are the two places that I know of. You have restaurants you have kosher restaurants anymore. The synagogues don't have any guards in front of them because there's no need for guards. No one has ever attacked a synagogue in Iran. And they actually, Jews in Iran have a slightly higher than average wealth than ordinary Iranians. They're somewhat wealthy, a wealthy group. And according to the constitution, Jews in Iran must have a seat in parliament. That's the constitution. It's not, they don't have to be popular. They don't have to have a popular candidate, let's say, who sweeps who becomes popular across the country. If the Jewish population chooses a person, that's going to be the Jewish MP, no matter how small their numbers are. whatever their numbers, they have a seat in parliament that is designated for them. So, and we're supposedly the anti-Semites. In fact, I would argue that Zionists are the most anti-Semite, even though Jews are not necessarily Semites. The Ashkenazi Jews are European. The Palestinians are really the Semites, whether it's the Palestinians, Muslims or Christians or Jews. They're the Semites, not the Zionists who come from abroad. But in any case, let's pretend that they are. The most anti-Semite people are the Zionist Jews, who are basically telling the world that all the Jews, including those who are totally against them, they are us. Fortunately, we have lots of young Jews, especially, lots of Jews, but especially young Jews, who are standing up against them and telling the world that this is garbage, this is nonsense. So they're the ones who are trying to attribute this Holocaust to Jews. And so they're the enemy of Judaism. They're the enemies of Judaism. And Christian Zionists are the enemies of Christianity because they claim that Christ, who we all love, supports genocide. Christ would be an enemy of genocide. He would be utterly opposed and steadfast against genocide. But these people are trying to create an image of Christianity where Christ supports slaughtering kids. Just like ISIS, just like Al Qaeda. The Americans, Western intelligence agencies, through the Saudis and the Qataris, and more recently Turkey, they created and promoted these extremist groups, these Salafi and Wahhabi extremists. They supported them. The first textbooks for the extremists in Afghanistan were published in the United States at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. The school textbooks that they would publish them there, take them to Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the refugees were, and have the kids read them. And they were takfiri books, make them hate the Russians, right? So the Americans, they began this process of this is not Islam. This is their Islam. This is American Islam. This is British intelligence Islam. ISIS, Al Qaeda, what we have in Syria, all these terrorist groups beheading people. It's their Islam. And then they attribute it to us. Just like Zionism. So Zionism, whether Christian or Jewish, or this extremist takfiri ideology that the West promotes and uses in Syria and Libya and Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, or in Russia or in Central Asia, these are all creations of that have of sinister people who have nothing to do with Islam, who have nothing to do with Judaism, and who have nothing to do with Christianity.
Well, one more for you, Professor Marandi. Where does Iran go from here? And also, there was an interview of you on Sky News. Did you find that full interview? Because I saw a clip on X, but did they delete that interview?
When I did the interview, because I'm so overwhelmed, and I'd like to apologize because a lot of people contact me and I just can't answer because I'm really exhausted, and I don't have the time to answer and to do all these different interviews. And I apologize to all of them. I know they're all excellent people and they're all trying to do good, but I just can't do anymore. Physically, I feel very, sometimes I feel terrible because like I do an interview with you and I do with interviews with others, and I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. And it doesn't give me a good feeling. So I'm exhausted, and so some people are contacting me constantly, and they probably think I'm being arrogant or I'm ignoring them, but I just can't. So I'm terribly I'm terribly exhausted.
No, I'm
But
sure I knew everybody was going to reach out to you. I figured.
So I just tweeted that, look, I was on Sky News. If I know how you can find it. That you can go to the Sky News or any media outlet, to their YouTube or whatever, and then you find that piece and you cut it and you take it out. And I just I don't have the patience for that, and I'm too tired. So I just said, look, does anyone have it? And a lot of people were kind enough to find it and to publish it, and I retweeted some of them, and then some of them showed or tweeted back to me that these people found it. So they are. I don't know if the complete interview is still online, but I did tweet or retweet. I didn't tweet, but I retweeted the tweets of others who went and found parts of it or all of it. It was an interesting interview, and I think it does reveal how horrible Western media is, and how complicit they are in the Holocaust. And it just tells us, it just shows to us how human beings haven't changed. And that, I mean, there are many great people, and we've seen them in the United States, in Europe, in our country. Our country is, I think, the pride of the world. They're the ones who are supporting the Palestinians. They've been paying a price for 40 some years, and that's why we're being attacked now. It's good against evil here. But there's so many people, but on the other hand, they're terrible people too. And these awful people, they will do anything in the name of freedom, democracy, nationalism, their race, or whatever. In the past, many thought that the era of genocide and the era of fascism was over, and this is like the human being has advanced. No, it hasn't. We still have the same issues. Some stand on the right side, some stand on the wrong side. But Western elites, Western journalists from mainstream media, they are overwhelmingly complicit in genocide. And their narrative building, whether it's on Iran or whether it's on Palestine or whether it's on Lebanon or Yemen, has always been to support the forces of genocide. And I'm sure there are some people, decent people among them, but overwhelmingly that's how it is.
100%. What do you think happens from here? Is just going to be a back and forth between Israel and Iran with attacks?
I don't know how long this will take, but I know that the Iranians are determined to make the Israeli regime feel defeated. And if can you hear me?
Yeah, I think you were saying feel defeated.
Yeah, the Iranians are determined to make the Israeli regime feel defeated, and they will. And if the Americans get involved, God save the world, because it will be a catastrophe for the entire world.
Professor Marandi, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy, so I appreciate you making time for me.
I'm always, whenever you tell me, I'll be on your show.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.